Welcome, ex-Spartans. Imagine that you are hired by a company to build their security operations center from scratch. And you have no help. You are the only person in that SOC. As such, you are supposed to play several roles. You are supposed to be the engineer, the analyst, the hiring manager, and the manager. And it is your first week, and you are starting to regret your decision. Imposter syndrome is kicking in. You are starting to question yourself and wondering if your manager and the company made a mistake by hiring you. During the first few months in your new position, I recommend that you focus on 3 aspects of the SOC. These aspects will lay the foundation for everything that follows. Let's now go over those. The first step is mapping everything. During this phase, you must understand as much as possible about the intricacies of the company. This is the time when you need to ask a lot of questions, and you must approach this from 2 different angles. The first one is the technical, and the second one is the people. Starting with the technical, you must ask questions such as, what kind of infrastructure do we have? Is it cloud? Is it on-prem? Is it hybrid? Is it a multi-cloud? How about development and deployment workflows? How do they work? What are the actors involved? What are the technologies involved? What about internet-facing assets? Which servers, which services are exposed to the internet? Another one would be, are there any existing security tools in place? An EDR, perhaps, a firewall. Then you must understand the people part. What are the teams in place? What are the hierarchies? How are teams cooperating? How does the data flow between teams? What are the processes in place that allow teams to collaborate? And a very important one, which teams have access to what, and which teams have highly privileged access. Based on this information, you are going to have a full map of the company that should be as detailed as possible. With this information at hand, you can now move on to create a threat model for the company, so you can understand what are the potential attack points from an attacker's perspective. The second step is build a logging and alerting pipeline. Now that you have a good understanding of the company, the services, the stack, and the third-party providers, it is time to collect logs and send them somewhere that you can search and create rules on so that you have alerts. Now, the best way to go about this is to send the logs to either a log management solution or a SIEM. Ideally, you should use a SIEM because it's usually more prepared for security operations, but you can also use a log management tool. It may be the case that you don't have either of these, which is a shame, but there is a solution. If you use a cloud provider, in this case I'm going to talk about AWS because it's the one I know, but I'm sure that you can build something similar using GCP or Azure. There are multiple ways you can approach this, so I'm going to suggest an idea, just give you an idea. One idea would be to use a Lambda function to pull the logs from the third-party provider. You send the logs to CloudWatch or to S3, store them on S3, and then you can use Athena to query the logs, and you can use another Lambda function to do the alerting, combined with, say, SNS. With a simple pipeline like this, you are going to be able to collect the logs, and you are going to be able to generate alerts, and if there is an incident, you are able to search through these logs, which is very critical. Now, the last thing I want to mention is creating detections using a top-down approach. And what I mean by this is that when you join your company and when you have a simple log management aggregation and alerting infrastructure in place, you are going to start by creating rules that apply generically to your infrastructure. This means that you can apply these rules in any organization that uses the same stack as you. So you have rules for AWS, you have rules for Windows machines, whatever service that you may have in place. But this is the first step. This is what I call MSSP SOC, a generic SOC. But as you transition into an organization-centric SOC, a more mature SOC, you are going to start creating detections that are more aligned with the needs and the specificities of the company. As an example to distinguish these 2 types of detections, let's imagine that you have an API exposed to the internet. An MSSP detection or set of rules would detect attacks like cross-site scripting, for instance, or perhaps SQL injection. But a set of rules that is more tailored to the company is going to detect something much more specific. Specific parameters, specific values, the volume of traffic. These are details that are really specific to your company and only make sense in that context, in no other context. Now, if you are wondering, where can I get these generic rules? Google is your friend. Never forget that. Now, as we approach the end of the video, I'd like to leave you with some notes. The first one is the future of your SOC is going to depend on the capacity and on the budget. And that means that you have to plan accordingly. If your SOC is a small SOC, you need to have a lean approach. And that means that you need to avoid time wasters and bureaucracy. You need to spend less time on tickets, less time on metrics, and less time on unnecessary reports. It doesn't mean that these are going to disappear completely because they are part of the normal day-to-day, but that means that you just need to cut down on the number. You have a small team, you cannot behave like you have a larger team. Another tip that I want to give you is keep open communication with your manager and your coworkers. Ask questions, report milestones, achievements, roadblocks, and document everything. Because after all, an elite SOC deserves a proper blueprint and documentation. And there you have it, Spartans, a crash course on bootstrapping a SOC. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and enable notifications so you don't miss anything. Until next time, stay safe, stay paranoid.